Broadcasting and recording now, and I will open, and just let me know when you've started.
Hi Greg, we're live.
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. It's Thursday, the 2nd of March, 2023. This is a licensing subcommittee meeting of the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, reconvening to consider the case of Earls Court Food and Wine of 216 to 218 Earls Court Road, SW5, which we opened on the 19th of January. I'm going to go around the introductions because we do have one new party in the room tonight, one of the objectors that didn't attend in person. So my name's Greg Hammond. I'm Councillor for Courtfield Ward, immediately to the east of the site, and I'm chairing the proceedings. We have two other members of the committee who are the decision makers, so if they could come on the cameras and introduce themselves, starting with Councillor Simmons, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Claire Simmons and Ward Councillor for Nottingdale Ward and member of the subcommittee. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And Councillor Knight.
Hi, I'm Councillor Lucy Knight, Councillor of Holland and member of the subcommittee.
Thanks very much. And we did our declarations in the earlier hearing on the 19th of January. And we have our legal officer tonight assisting us again.
Good evening, Chair.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mazurier. And licensing officer, please.
Apologies. Good evening, Chair. Paul Phelan, licensing present.
Thanks, Mr. Phelan. And governance, I won't ask you all to introduce yourselves, but I see we've got Anne, Gareth and Luke with us tonight. And the applicant, Mr. Colvin, good evening. Could you introduce yourself and your party for the benefit of the extra objective we've got tonight, please? And you're on mute.
Sorry. Philip Colvin, KC, counsel for the applicant. I am instructed by Thomas O'Malloyne, who's here. And I also have my client Shah Rehan and Samia Sunasara.
Thanks very much indeed. And objectors, we have Councillor Wade. If you can come on and see if you can hear us.
Yes, Councillor Wade, Earls Court Ward Councillor and
Thanks.
Chair of Nublin Square Residents Association.
Thanks very much. And I think we've got Ms. Camus, I think you've just arrived. Can you hear us okay?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Fantastic. And Philippa Seaburn, are you hearing?
I can hear you, thank you.
Fantastic. Right. Welcome, everybody. And the ground rules for doing an online hearing, if I could ask everybody to keep your microphones on mute, except when you have a speaking part, because we do tend to get interference if we don't. I'd also ask you to turn your cameras off, except when you're speaking, which saves the bandwidth on Teams. And very importantly, the chat function on Teams isn't monitored and it doesn't form part of the hearing. So please do not use the chat function. For Ms. Seaburn's benefit, I'll go through all the documents that we've had. So at the last, the first day of the hearing, we had the notice of the hearing of 94 pages and the main hearing bundle, and that was Exhibit 1. We had a 29-page supplementary bundle from the applicant received on the 13th of January, which we called Exhibit 2. And then we had the licensing committee decision for the premises dated the 26th of May 2021 of 11 pages, which we called Exhibit 3. Those were all documents that we considered when we were assembled in January. Since then, we've received a skeleton argument from Mr. Colvin of 7 pages. We'll call that Exhibit 4. We then received a new bundle which contained the old bundle. It contained the skeleton argument and it contained new representations from the objectors. It's not paginated, but we'll call that one Exhibit 5. And then yesterday, the 1st of March, we had 2 pages of email exchanges between the applicant and the licensing committee, in the licensing department, which we'll call Exhibit 6. So those are the written documents that we've received. In a moment, I'll hand over to Mr. Colvin to make his submissions. and then it'll be the objector's turn. But we did issue a summary decision on the at the end of the previous hearing, but Mr. Colvin has asked us to reconvene because we haven't issued the full reasoned decision, which is the point at which the appeal period starts. Are there any preliminary matters, first of all, from Mr. Colvin?
There are not, sirs. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And are there any preliminary matters from the objectors before we get going? So, Councillor Wade.
No.
Ms. Camis.
No.
That was a no for preliminary matters. And Ms. Seaburn.
No.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask Mr. Colvin to have 10 minutes to present his submissions this evening. Then there'll be questions from the committee, the licensing officer, the legal officer, and the objectors. And then I'll give each of the objectors 10 minutes in turn to make their cases, and there'll be questions again by the parties, and then the committee will retire to make our decision. So, Mr. Colvin, over to you, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I say thank you very much indeed for reconvening this hearing. I know that you will have seen, read and inwardly digested the skeleton argument which we submitted, and so I intend to be very brief indeed. We are not here to re-argue the whole case or to submit new evidence before you or anything like that. The licensing subcommittee got itself to a point in the procedure, having given everybody who wished to attend a full hearing on the last occasion. We are here simply to address one consequential matter. On the 27th of May of 2020, my client was given permission by the subcommittee to trade until 1 AM on Sunday to Thursday nights for 1 year. On the 26th of May of 2021, that was extended by a further 16 months to September 2022. Both decisions recorded that there had been no complaints that my client was undermining the licensing objectives. The express purpose, the stated purpose of the May 2021 decision was to allow monitoring to take place both during and outside lockdown during that extended hour. And my client continued to trade until 1 AM on Sunday to Thursday nights. So 29 months passed by, monitored, no incident, no complaints, no observation, no negative comment by any responsible authority that 1 extra hour of trade granted on a test basis for nearly 2.5 years was causing an issue. Now, rising from the summary decision, we totally understand that the subcommittee does not wish to extend that trade to 2 AM on Sunday to Thursday. It did on Friday and Saturday, for which thank you. We totally understand it does not wish to extend the trade to 2 AM on Sunday to Thursday, but very diffidently and respectfully, we're not clear why our client was not permitted to go to 1 AM as before, since that was tried and tested. It would be very impertinent of me to ask why that decision was recorded, but we simply request that the logic be followed through to permit trade to go on until 1 on Sunday to Thursday night, as it has been for years. There's a question, can you do that? And the answer to that is yes, because you're not, as lawyers put it, functus officio, you haven't completed your functions, and also you have the ability to correct accidental slips. Should you? We would say respectfully yes, because it's a reasonable way of sorting out this relatively minor matter without further expense. I can see, in fact, I've just seen that further material has gone in from objectors, insofar as this rehearses matters previously looked at It's already been considered and I've made submissions about it. Insofar as it raises new matters, that has not been invited by you, and so I intend to say no more about it. Those are my submissions for this evening. Thank you very much indeed for listening to them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Colvin. I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any questions. So, Councillor Sermons.
Not at this stage, no.
Thanks, Rats. Councillor Knight.
No, nothing at this stage. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And I have no questions either. Mr. Mazzieri, do you have any questions as the legal officer?
None from me at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Now, objectors, this is your opportunity to ask questions of Mr. Colvin about his submissions. You get your chance to make your case in a moment. So, Councillor Wade, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Thanks, Rats. Ms. Camus, do you have any questions?
Well, I get to say how I object later on, don't I?
You do, yes, exactly. You're going to get 10 minutes in very short order.
Okay, so I'll wait till then. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, Ms. Seaburn, do you have any questions for Mr. Colvin?
Not at this moment, thank you.
Okay, so thanks very much indeed, Mr. Colvin. I'm now going to turn to the objectors, and each one in turn will get your opportunity for 10 minutes. So I'm going to start with Councillor Wade. You can change the order if you want to, but my normal call is to go to the ward councillor first.
No threats then. All right, my position remains the same. I think that in Earl's Court we are trying to maintain the midnight rule for alcohol sales. We do have a lot of outlets for alcohol. I don't feel that it's appropriate or justified for this business to be selling alcohol during the week at this hour. I do not feel that the hours fit in with the licensing objectives, given the issues associated with the area around the station, and that the residents' concerns which led to the call to action, the petition, and the recent police and council month-long initiative to deal with issues. I think that also that it touches on some of the problems, for example, related to the station, because the station's actually had to close on a couple of occasions recently because of staff shortages. And I know that the applicants have spoken to the station, but there is concern that late night sales can cause issues for people coming out of the station. And I would ask that the decision of the committee is to reinstate the midnight alcohol sales guidelines for Earl's Court is upheld. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. Ms. Camus, would you like to go next for your 10 minutes?
Yeah, 1 second, sorry. My objection is because the comparison on the time that they're saying, that there was no issues or anything, we were mostly in lockdown, and I provided a picture of sort of the outside of the premises and the number of people. So it cannot be measured that there was no incidences when there is roughly 2 or 3 people on the street, and most of the businesses were closed at that time. Most people were indoors. Because I took pictures of that. I just happened to take pictures on that because I was in my premises, and which I supplied. So you cannot compare that period of time to today. So so I just think that's a poorly way of going back to something and trying to reinstate something that was then in comparison to now. It's not a good comparison, basically, because if there's nobody on the street, it's like if people are in lockdown, you cannot say 2 or 3 people outside compared to thousands of people outside. The ratio would be higher. If there was 1 complaint, that means the ratio of complaints might be 100. So you can't, I'm just guessing that, So for me, I think it's a bit long-winded to go back on something that doesn't really reflect, and you're basing it on that. And if you do decide to do that, then you know, what's the percentage of complaints that will occur for that period of time? So that's my objection, really.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Ms. Camis. Now, Ms. Seaborn, I appreciate you weren't at the hearing in person last time, but would you like to address us tonight for up to 10 minutes?
Thank you. Yeah, well, I represent probably one of the nearest residents association, the Earls Court Village, and our roads come directly off Earls Court Road. People come into our village from Hogarth Road, Kenway Road, into Walgrave Road and Redfield Lane, and then out through Kenway Passage to Cromwell Road. And we know that there's a large street population in Earls Court Road, and our houses are very small, close together, and any noise reverberates round all of us. So we would appreciate the council keeping the alcohol cut-off time to midnight, which we think would be reasonable, on Monday to Thursday. And as with the other, our councillor and Miss Lamis, we quite agree. We think times have changed, so it's a slightly unfair comparison to say that there's been no incidents in the past 6 months or 20 months, because there hasn't been anybody around. And particularly in the last 6 months, there's been a bitterly cold winter with no one going out in the evening, and presumably it's even worse to go out in the small hours. Whereas it would be a different story for the warmer months. In summer months, there's plenty of people around and partying, and lots of street people find it very comfortable to be out and about. So we don't think it's really a good comparison. And so it's terribly difficult to do the council's objectives of no noise, crime, or ASB. And if I may, I'm representing some of my residents who would have liked to have made representation before, but owing to it being a very cold winter, didn't get around to doing it at the right time. We feel that selling alcohol, being able to sell alcohol at night does attract street people and partying for visitors. If I may, I'm representing Mrs. Nikki Adams, 12 Walgrave Road. She says she daren't open her door at night because people open her gate and come and sit on the steps at night drinking their alcohol. And that's very disturbing and it's scary. Charlotte Huskinson, 43 Kenway, says she's woken up at night by noise nuisance, by drunk and disorderly people. Mrs. Nelson at 47 Kenway, she finishes with...
Can I interject?
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, can I interject? You're being live streamed, so I don't think you should be giving out people's addresses on the live stream. If you just say the road name rather than the number.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
I would be concerned about new evidence just coming in at this stage anyway.
Do you call this new evidence? It's just repeating what the Residents' Association agrees with.
Yeah, I think Mr. Colvin, we will allow Ms. Seaborn, as she didn't participate last time, to say her piece for her 10 minutes.
Thank you. Mrs. Nelson, she finishes her letter with alcohol abuse is a huge problem in London, and it links to drug abuse and petty crime. and sells alcohol at night just makes the situation worse. There's Mrs. Bicknell in Kenway Road. She says our residents outnumber the shopkeepers, and we are entitled to a good night's sleep. And there are a couple of houses in Kenway Road, just behind the pub. They back onto an estate agent and a restaurant in Hogarth Road. And they've written and said that they get people coming down until 3 a.m. who are completely out of control of themselves, swearing and shouting. And it wakes up their 6-year-old daughter, and it's very disturbing. So we sort of wonder what it's like for nighttime staff of retailers, because they must attract alcohol sales for certain types of people. And how do they feel about there being no police around? Local police finish at 11 a.m. It takes 15 to 20 minutes for the Met Police to get there. And we still consider it an unfair representation to say that the last months have been no incidents at the shop. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ms. Seaburn, and all of you. Can I just Mr. Seaburn, did any of the representations talk about timings apart from the one you mentioned at 3 a.m. with the 6-year-old daughter, or were they fairly unspecific about
They haven't this time at the moment. No, haven't given me times of these incidences for themselves.
Thanks very much. And then for the three of you, do you accept that yes, the extension to 0100 to 1 in the morning for 2 temporary periods, yes, it was partly through lockdown, but the last period up to September 2022 was 9 months of that was after lockdown. What do you say about that?
I personally feel, well, as a residents' association, that the council has decided appropriately that the lockdown stop time should be to midnight. And we don't see that a special retailer should consider it necessary to be open until 1 a.m. just for the sake of a few extra cans, selling a few extra cans.
And thank you.
I think also that the
can I just sorry, Councillor Wade, can I just make sure that Philippa Seaburn has finished her point, then I'll bring you in. Sorry, Ms. Seaburn, please carry on and finish your point.
Yes, we think one thing leads to another, and if they get their licence to 1 p.m, they will very soon be asking it to 2 a.m. And possibly they have trained the nighttime staff how to stop any incidences from happening in the shop. They're probably well trained, and so therefore we're not going to hear about them.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Seaburn. If I can go back to Councillor Wade, please, if you can address yourself to the question I asked, which was.
Sorry, I think it reflects a change of acceptance within residents in the Earls Court ward as to issues that are kind of promoting or not helping the ASB and the antisocial behaviour and the congregation of it's not supporting improvement, and I think that it's part of a pattern which residents wish to resist. So whereas that might have been a culture to have provided a license, they may during lockdown it was different. Perhaps people weren't going out, but there has been a sea change. in how residents in Earl's Court feel about how they want businesses to behave and how they want them to operate. And they feel that the function of a license of this going to this time is not appropriate given the problems that we have.
And do you think there's a particular issue with Monday to Thursday, or is it as applied for?
We objected, if you remember,
I do.
For the 2 a.m. So I mean, what you've awarded over on the weekend is you've made that decision, but actually we feel that the decision that the original committee made to go back to midnight during the working week was appropriate. They're getting the time over the weekend. Actually, we would like to see some concession and actually have midnight in line with the other businesses along the street, which is midnight for the rest of the week.
Thanks very much, Councillor Wade. Now let me ask my two colleagues if they've got questions for the objectors. Councillor Simmons first, please. And then I'll bring Ms. Camis.
Can I say?
Sorry, before Ms. Councillor Simmons, Ms. Camis, would you like to come in on my questions? I apologise for not bringing you in there.
It's fine. So for me, when I mentioned about the time when to compare it to, so you have to understand the general atmosphere from reports from the news that past COVID, people's mental health has changed. Financially, people have changed. We're actually in a recession right now. So there's more homelessness, there's more alcohol abuse, more drug abuse, lots of anything negative, you know. Old people suffering in cold. There's so many objects. Things are not getting better. I would understand if they were asking for an extension based that there's more police, or there is more patrol, or there is, you know, better lighting, or, you know, more measures put into place for the public and the residents. But there hasn't been a change, an increase to make things better in order to put something that will make the situation as it is even worse. And as I said before in the last meeting, once we fix what we have at the moment, which is a terrible state and lots of crime happening, noise, you know, antisocial behaviour, then by all means you can apply. But they cannot be given something when the situation is really bad at this moment. So I think it's very greedy of them to ask for a full week when they've already got the weekend. They can measure that first. We can all measure it and be fair to them as a business. And when we measure that, then by all means, they could apply again and see if they can get the weekday based on what they're doing on the weekend. But I don't think it's fair when there's people objecting and thousands of people have signed and objected it. Loads of residents who are suffering because of one business. It cannot be. You guys don't, you know, sorry, everybody here, committee, whoever, you don't live right next to it or run a business next to it. I suffer on a daily basis. And so I will be reporting any incidences that happen. So hopefully if they keep in line, then by all means. But right now, it shouldn't be granted. I think you made a fair decision in the first place, which I disagree with, but fair's fair. You've given them the weekend. Let's measure that. And then their solicitor, barrister can reapply based on that. But you can't base it on something on a timescale where there was no foot flow. I see two people out the window, if that. So, you know, there was nobody, even the tourists, there's no tourism, there's no flights, there's nobody coming out of Earl's Court Station, you know, and then past lockdown, it was still a very small amount of people. So I think it's just being a bit greedy and just going back onto something which is, they already got a no, and it's a no. You know, it shouldn't be looked back into. It's a bit petty and wasting our time. And if you do grant it, then I think you're not considering the residents and other businesses, which I think is unfair. And for me, the most important thing is my safety. My safety is more important than the money or whatever they're making, and all the other residents' safety as well.
Do you, so while you're with us, Ms. Camis, do you accept though that the last 9 months of the temporary grant to 1 in the morning was after lockdown, include up till September last year?
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning of this, the situation with people and their mental health has changed. Things have not got better. So the 9 months hasn't been good. It hasn't been good. Like, you're asking me to call the police every time there's an incident. They're not going to. I've called the police before when there's people sitting outside who I saw came out of their off licence shooting heroin in their leg. And I've got witnesses to that, residents who are my clients. So you cannot say it isn't. Or do I call the police and say, excuse me, there's someone shooting drugs outside? They're not even going to come. Or I have to fill out an online form for the 11 whatever number and wait 2-3 days for somebody to come to me. Like, I need somebody now. So the police are not going to come because when you call them, it's not an emergency. They think it's not an emergency unless someone is being stabbed or strangled. So if you want me to call the police every day, by all means, I will start doing it and I will start recording it, because I'll use my CCTV and I will record everything and I will present it next time. And if you want me to waste the resources that this government provides just because of this off licence, then by all means, I will start doing it. I'll even employ someone to do it all day, just to keep an eye out to make sure that I'm safe in my own business.
Okay, thank you very much. You can go on to mute. Thank you. And Councillor Simmons, any questions from you for the objectives?
Thank you very much. I've got a couple actually. First of all, I wanted to ask Councillor Wade regarding the petition that you mentioned in your submission of over 1,100 residents. I just wanted to clarify, you say that was about shoplifting ASB and about the core area, and I just wanted to double check that that was not specifically in relation to these premises.
It wasn't. It was a petition which was from Earls Court Square, Nevern Square, because this premises is in the Nevern Square Conservation Area,
of course,
and Earls Court Society, and it was really a blanket of what people felt because of the high level of shoplifting associated with drug-related activity and antisocial behaviour that is affecting the core around the station. So, not necessarily this business, but it was the comments that were coming through at the same time about the premises. People feel uncomfortable about the premises. They feel it doesn't contribute to people feeling safe. Which came through very loud and clear.
Did the comments actually mention this specific premises, or
yes.
Is it just that is relevant because it's included in the area?
When we did the community table, which was with the chair of Earls Court Square, also David Alavia, who is the chair of the Safer Neighbourhood Board, it came up more often than any other premises. People just feel uncomfortable about it. They don't feel safe.
Thank you very much. And I also wanted to ask a quick question to Ms. Seabohm, if possible. Yes. Where we have, you mentioned quite a few people who've made representations of noise nuisance in the side streets caused by late night drinkers. And I just wanted to check, those representations have been made to the Earls Court Village Residents Association, is that right?
Yes.
So technically, albeit the council and the police have not received complaints, that the Residents Association has?
Technically, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then I just had one final, more general question, which is, again, on the question of reports and complaints. It seems to me, and I just wondered if any of the objectors have any comment on this, the sort of scale of low-level nuisance, shall we say, might not warrant necessarily a police report, but still there would be, if there's a significant extent of it during the relevant hour, then potentially that would have a cumulative effect. Whereas if you have one person dropping one piece of litter, say, you wouldn't necessarily report that. But if this is repetitive on a sort of bigger scale, then you would have a cumulative problem, and potentially that could be reported somewhere.
I think that Andrea Lovell, who represented Earls Court Village, Earls Court Gardens and the Earls Court Society, complained about the cans that appear. Earls Court Gardens, on one side, the gardens come down to the pavement, and so what happens is people get their cans and they go and drink, and so there's no defensible space, so they're going into the gardens. And she was commenting that in fact the cans were being located in and around the gardens, and also at the rear of the Earls Court Medical Centre, and also at the front in Hogarth Place. So it's clear that if you have somewhere that sells alcohol and people don't have somewhere to drink it, that they drink it in the street and then they leave the litter. So that came up on a number of occasions in her comments.
Thank you. I suppose I'm just trying to get to some understanding of how, obviously I can see that residents are very concerned about this, and I suppose I'm just trying to reconcile that with there not being evidence of complaints reported formally. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Simmons. Councillor Knight, any questions from you?
Yes. These don't have to necessarily be directed at one person, but kind of going off what Claire's just been talking about, do you think there's a reason why people haven't been complaining? Just because it's clear that there's a large group of you that feel very strongly about this vendor, and I just want to understand why you think those complaints, or why people are not complaining, and that's why they might not have been documented. Is there a particular reason, or people don't feel like anything's going to be done if they do? I'd just be interested to hear on that.
Let's look for somebody to jump in. Councillor Wade,
I think that when we've had the residents' meetings with the business, these things have been raised. For example, like the cleaning, which is one condition which has been raised at the last meeting, and I think there's going to be there was commitment to a meeting to see whether there was a better method of cleaning outside the store. But these comments have been raised at the residents' meetings. And so it's not that the premises is unaware.
Okay. And then I was just going to say, in terms of measuring Earls Court Food and Wine. Sorry, does anyone else want to come in? I don't know if.
May I?
Yes.
I would like to say what the reason they've told me that they haven't phoned the police is because it's the lady with the people keeping her daughter awake at 3 a.m. She said it's too tiring, very tiring to go and phone the police because they often don't answer. And the same with the other people, they just feel that nothing's going to happen. that's the reason why our lot haven't made complaints to the police. But if there is something very serious, we often email our local community policeman, Matt Bantic, about various things, and he's extremely helpful and replies helpfully.
Okay, thank you.
Can we, Ms. Camis came on line. I think she wants to add something, so let's have
Yeah, I mean, it's just the information available to complain, because for me, my only, if I need help, my first point is I've gone into the store before to say, there's something, thrown outside, or one of your clients is sitting outside our doorstep, or they've been moved to help, which has been no help. So, totally ignored. The police is, if it's not a serious crime, as I just said earlier, someone getting stabbed, or, but, also when I had a Ring doorbell outside, because I was getting, my Ring doorbell was being knocked all the time, like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, like all sorts of hours. I can see drug dealers literally selling drugs outside, and they're using the people that are going in and out of the property to sell to, it's their meeting point. So I can see that happen. I can identify them all. If you put them, I can show you who they are. It's constant. They park their car across the road and they stand outside the off license, and the off license is not doing anything to move them away. As I said, I've asked them to move away before, and they threw a drink at me and threw a can in my face, literally all over me. And I come home in the morning to work, and I find like broken wine bottles, beer cans, like propped up onto my intercom on the doorway, and I'm having to like clean this every morning, like broken bottles and stuff. So it's not a really nice experience to come to first thing in the morning. So it's all these, all these things. So it's difficult. But the only way is just to call the police or to report it online, which is too time consuming. Like, I don't have the time to sit and wait for the police 2-3 hours and I'll be distracted in my day. There's not enough police outside. I have stopped people outside before, police officers, and they're just saying, oh, okay, yeah, well, we'll keep monitoring the area. So that's my point.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Knight, any other questions?
I was just going to say, in comparison to the other vendors in the area, would you say this vendor, it causes many more issues than other vendors on Earls Court Road?
And we have to be focused on the midnight to 1.
Yeah. Sorry, in that context.
And on the Monday to on the days in question.
Yes, on the days in question.
Yeah, Monday to Friday, or Sunday to Thursday, early hours Monday to Friday, please.
May I say?
Yes, let's have Philippa Sleeburn in, please. Or was that yes?
It stands to reason if they are selling alcohol to people, then people are going to, or the street people anyway, are going to be noisy and come into our village streets, and partying people, visitors, they're going to be making a lot of noise, whereas the other places are closed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Knight. Mr. Mesurier, do you have any questions for the objectors? I think Councillor Wade wanted. Sorry, well, that was a no from Mr. Mesurier, was it? And then I see Councillor Wade's back.
It was just the other businesses. For example, the co-op has security. Pret is closed. Leon will be closed. So I think it's where places are open later, they actually have security on the door. So it's a different model.
Thanks, Linda.
Thanks very much, Councillor Wade. And Mr. Colvin, do you have any questions for the objectors?
Well, so I do not have questions, but a lot of this material has roamed far and wide. And I wonder whether I might just be given 3 minutes to summarise at the end of the hearing, rather than turning this into a mini trial.
I appreciate the request, and of course the objectors are not legally qualified, so letting them range far and wide. If you have a summing up,
I mean, you've obviously made a decision, that's fine, and I'm not contesting that, but I would like just the opportunity to answer some of it.
I mean, the problem is I will have to give them a chance to come back if I give you a summing up.
Well, maybe they should be allowed to quickly summarise if they want to say anything else, and then I can quickly reply, and then that might be, because usually the applicant gets to go last. So maybe that would be the best way of doing it, rather than having cross-examination of me and 3 different people.
Well, why don't? Yes, all right. Well, to be fair, then I'm going to give you I will give you a chance to speak right now. Then, and then we'll give the others a chance to come back as well. So go on then.
Okay. So first of all, this case only concerns 12 until 1 on, in fact, Sunday to Thursday night. I put Monday to Friday in the skeleton because it's literally Monday to Friday, but it's on those nights, Sunday to Thursday nights. It's quite wrong to say that my client would be going beyond what's around. Crystals at 320 Earls Court Road is a 24-hour premises. There's also another premises at 243A Old Brompton Road, which is 24 hours. This only concerns 12 till 1 on Sunday, Thursday nights for my client. The second thing I want to say is that you can really only operate on the evidence that you have got. I'm not going to rehash any of my previous submissions, but just for example, something was said about cleaning, and we gave lots of evidence last time about how my client cleans, pressure washer and all of that sort of stuff, and leaves its premises in very good order. My client is not the cause of litter sitting out there on the Earls Court Road, which is a busy road. What is the evidence which you have before you? It's extremely clear. There are no complaints, firstly. The responsible authorities, who know that the residents have a beef against my client, have not made any representation in this case, whether by direct evidence or by way of inference, that my client might be the cause of wider concerns in the locality. Thirdly, we have the evidence of Adrian Studd, which is uncontested, and he's actually watched how the premises operates, who's using the premises during the hours we are concerned about. And fourthly, even allowing for residents to make submissions, nobody has given evidence that alcohol taken from my client's premises is taken off for street parties in adjoining streets. If that were true, it would be a very, very good answer to this application. But it's not an answer because there's literally no evidence about it at all. And I'm afraid to say, it makes me feel rather uncomfortable to hear somebody say they're uncomfortable about my client's premises. I'm not quite sure what the implication that you're supposed to draw from that is. My client is a lawful trader who pays rent and business rates and operates his license in a lawful manner. And so things about how a resident feels uncomfortable is not something which can possibly assist you. It's been said by Ms. Camis that my client's premises causes all sorts of problems. We established on the last occasion, she doesn't trade into the middle of the night. She closes in the evening. She's unaffected by what is going on between 12 and 1. She said that my client should reapply in a year's time. Why? And if my client were to reapply in a year's time, my client would be saying, well, you gave my client a specifically monitored test to trade over a period of 29 months. And that 29 months, I would be saying, was summer and winter, lockdown and non-lockdown. It was given by the council for a specific purpose. And so following the logic through, it would be reasonable to say, well, you've passed that test. There's no evidence against you whatsoever. But look out, be careful, because if there's evidence in future that people are taking cans and partying or whatever in neighbouring streets, what the council have given, the council may take away. Some of the evidence was about is triple hearsay introduced in a reconvened hearings. I'm not quite sure what weight you can attach to it, but it was someone saying that they get disturbed at 3 o'clock in the morning. Clearly, that's nothing whatsoever to do with my client. I've said something about following the logic through. The logic of 1 o'clock granted for 29 months without incident is to allow my client to continue to do it. But also, it'd be fair to say that the subcommittee, in its wisdom, granted my client longer hours over the weekend, Friday and Saturday nights. It only traded till 2 o'clock on temporary event notices. It must have thought that my client is performing well in order to be given longer hours. And we would say again, the logic is, well, in which case it ought to be able to continue to do what it was being allowed to do until September of 2022. I'm not sure what the subcommittee's reasoning was in granting longer on Friday and Saturday than my client had previously had, but taking away essentially what my client had previously had, all without incident. But we would say that the logic of this case is my client should be allowed to trade as it had been all the way back to May of 2020. So that's all I wish to say, which is more than I came to say, but I hope I've covered off the new remarks which have been made. Thanks for giving me the indulgence.
Thank you, Mr. Colvin. I have to give the objectors a final chance as well, as we've had a summing up. Councillor Wade, any summing up? You don't have to because you were on the very
I just want to give some responses. Crystals is in a different location. It is not such a vulnerable location. It's further down Earls Court Road by Old Brompton Road. And so I don't think you're comparing like for like. The one in you're referring to on Old Brompton Road is in fact in Redcliffe Ward, and therefore we couldn't possibly comment on anything in Redcliffe Ward. On the last meeting, actually, it was discussed, and I think Philippa will be able to back me up on this. We had quite a detailed discussion about how the cleaning around the frontage of the store could be improved, and we discussed about whether jet washing or whether different type of materials could be used. So that was clearly a discussion. That's clearly an action point, and that meeting we're looking forward to having. I think
sorry, Councillor Wade, I don't want to hear about the cleaning because we are specifically considering midnight to 1 a.m.
It was just a point that the gentleman came up with, so I thought I would respond.
Yeah, all right, go on. Please carry on.
I think that it still comes back to that this is an operation that is within a conservation area. It actually faces another conservation area in a very densely populated area, and there is a consequence to its presence being there. And if we're looking for an improvement to Earls Court Road, actually, I think all businesses need to play their part in the recovery. And I think that we have enough alcohol licenses on the street. When you refer to hotel guests, most hotels do have bars. You've got Sainsbury's, you've got the Co-op, you've got M&S, and you've got Tesco's Local. You've got a large Sainsbury's and you've got a large Tesco's as well. In order you've got a 24-hour Sainsbury's and a 24-hour Tesco. So it's not as if and we've got other alcohol places. So it's not as if there's not enough alcohol outlets in the area. So I think that I would ask that the licensing committee do stand by the principle of midnight. It is a sensitive area. It would make a sea change, and it would give a lot of confidence to residents that the licensing can be supportive of change in the area. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Councillor Wade. And Ms Camis and Ms Seaburn, are you happy for Councillor Wade to have had the last word, or do you have anything new to add as by way of summary?
For me, it's just going back on what their barrister said. It's just it's not a good comparison to compare that period of time to now. It's completely different atmosphere, and as I said, it's completely different. You can't compare the low volume of footfall, tourism to this period and say, well, based on that, there was nobody reported anything, and then so it should be granted. I think it's not enough information right now. I think a good comparison would be see how you get on the weekend that was granted to you and use that as a comparison. But you can't compare a period of time that's different. It's like comparing a Fiat to a Bentley, two different cars. It's the same. 2 or 3 people on the street to increase to a couple of hundred compared to thousands is completely different. I was there, I can see it from my window, I can see it from the clients that I have, the number of clients before and compared to now. So I do notice it. So if you're going to ask, maybe he can provide some stats on the number of footfall, then he can, and then relate it to now, and then we can measure it. But right now, he hasn't provided that information for us. So, you know, if he can provide the information of the foot flow, or the crime in the area compared to the crime rates now, and that would be more fair. But you can't compare it to that. So that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Ms Seaburn, did you have any summing up points?
Yes.
Or has it all been said?
I would totally support Councillor Wade, what she said. We think that's entirely correct. And just to say that it's quite true that the shop is right next door to these conservation areas. And we don't think it was sensible that the QC said you can relate it to Crystal when it's right down the other end of the road. That doesn't come into people who shop there, hardly likely to come into our streets to drink their beers or whatever they've bought. And this is a sensitive area, and it would be really nice if this area could have good standards and set an example and for RBKC, and be as pleasant as possible to live in and be appreciated by the shops, even if they do pay their lot of business rates. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. So that's the objectives done and a summing up by all parties. We're not going to go through conditions again, except for condition 32. We omitted to add the Earls Court Gardens and Moreton Mews Residents Association to the list, and we intend to add that unless anybody objects. And there'll be time for you to come back at me and object while I'm summing up. Are there any other points from the legal officer, Mr. Masurio, before we close?
No, I just wanted to reiterate that obviously we are here just to focus on whether or not to grant till midnight to 1 AM Sunday to Thursday, into the early hours of Monday to Friday. So obviously you will need to concentrate on that. Conservation area isn't really a licensing consideration, it's more of a planning consideration, but beyond that, obviously you just got to focus on what evidence has come about in relation to this defined point. But that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Masurio. I see Mr. Colvin appeared on screen, and I was wondering if he was going to comment on either the condition or the legal advice.
No,
he wasn't. Okay, thanks very much indeed. And Mr. Phelan, are there any other matters from you as the licensing officer?
No, Chair, nothing from licensing. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anything from governance that needs to be addressed that's come up during the hearing?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much indeed. So we will issue a new summary decision within